The James Skrmetta Show podcast is brought to you, like always, by Mackard, Anderson & Associates, PLLC. The firm is highly regarded and aggressively litigates insurance denials, 18-wheeler wrecks, termite litigation, business disputes, and automobile crashes. They continue to receive excellent results year after year. I'm telling you right now, we trust these guys. We back these guys 100%. They sponsor the show, and for that, we are very thankful. If you have any questions, if you have any legal problems, and you need to talk to somebody, each intake is complimentary at no cost to the potential client. Please contact them at 601-450-1715 or visit machardlaw.com, mchardlaw.com, and make sure you mention James Skrmetta and the James Skrmetta Show podcast. James Skrmetta Show podcast, a very different version of the James Skrmetta Show podcast. What you just heard was the sound of breathing, something that was not afforded to George Floyd. We are doing a very stripped down version of the show. As you notice, there was no music at the beginning. There's no music going to be at the end. We are going to be ended on this show by some of the more powerful statements by some African American leaders or community members or whatever that I've kind of found pretty powerful, and we're going to let them speak instead of me speaking. So that'll end the show. Before we get into the actual situation of George Floyd and the protests and the riots, I want to talk about how we even got here and why we're doing the show. So at first I was going to just do a normal show. I was just going to kind of get some topics together, do a show, let it rip. And as the situation got progressively more serious, I thought, okay, well, we obviously can't do that. We obviously can't just pop on, do a podcast, not mention anything, and just talk about the Kardashians, Ozark, and the NFL. That's not going to work. So then I thought, well, we won't say anything. This is such a serious situation. This is obviously, such a solemn situation and such an awful situation that what can we add to the conversation? And then I thought, well, it's a bit hypocritical for me to come on here every week to talk about anything and everything, no matter what the situation is. We talk about the pandemic, we talk about aliens, we talk about the Kardashians, the NFL, and as small as this platform is, there are people who listen, and it is a platform, and it would be ridiculous for me to just ghost for a week in the middle of such a serious situation, pop back up next week, and go right back like nothing happened. So with that being said, we're going to give this what it deserves. We're just going to talk about the George Floyd situation, the protest, the backlash, and the reaction. We're going to let it be. We're not going to do a normal show. We're going to do just kind of the stripped down version. And this is a really hard, this is as hard of a situation to talk about as you can possibly find, especially for me. Or for anyone like me, and by that I mean a middle-class white guy. A middle-class white guy talking about this, very uncomfortable. And it can be very uncomfortable. It can be uncomfortable to listen to. Obviously it can be uncomfortable to listen to, but I'm speaking just from me. And that's just what this podcast is. It's just talking about how I see this thing. And trying to make some sense of what's going on around me. And I'm sure a lot of you who listen are trying to do the same, trying to look at this and say, what the hell's going on? What do I think? So right off the bat, look, I think George Floyd was murdered. I think George Floyd was murdered in cold blood in the streets of Minnesota. I think he was murdered by a policeman, and it was videotaped, and there was multiple policemen around him who did nothing. And I think that the man who knelt on George Floyd's neck and took the life from him in broad daylight should be prosecuted to the highest extent of the law, and he's a murderer. He's a murderer, as a murderer is a murderer. Bottom line. I think the people who stood around and did nothing should be prosecuted to the highest extent of the law. They were around to murder. They're police officers. They should protect. And they didn't protect. They did the opposite of protecting. The group that is supposed to protect the United States of America instead did the opposite and took the life unfairly, of a citizen of the United States of America. I think that's obviously disgusting. I think that's obviously bad. I think that's obviously evil. I think we can all agree on that. Obviously awful. If you listen to the podcast, you know that I live in the Deep South. And I love the Deep South. I cherish the Deep South. I've lived here my entire life, and I wouldn't want to live anywhere else. Being in the Deep South, not that this only happens in the Deep South, but being here, you hear things and see things that are pretty backwards compared to the rest of the United States or the world. One of the first things I heard was from the mayor of a city in Mississippi, the mayor of Petal, and he said, paraphrasing, he said, did he even die, from the knee, from being choked, or did he die from an overdose? He probably died from an overdose. A lot of them have weapons on him. Did he have a weapon on him? And this sounds insane. This sounds like something where it's like, what are you talking about? Like, how can that be your response? But I heard a lot of people whose first response was, well, was he resisting? Well, did he try and run? Well, was he on drugs? All of which are irrelevant. And systemic racism, to me, is something that is real. I don't think it's really even arguable that there are racial issues in America. There are problems in America. There is stereotyping, systemic racism, all that stuff's happening. When you see, especially where I'm from, if you see interracial couples, whether it's in movies, TV shows, in the public, it raises an eye. People question why. People question how. What's wrong with her? Why is she dating a black guy? Why is that black guy dating a white girl? What do you think that white girl's parents think? Things like that are real. As long as those things exist, racism exists. Racism breeds. That is racism. I think it's disgusting. I hate to see it, but it's a real thing. Now, as a white guy, as a middle-class white guy, I do not deal with the police the same way that African Americans do. I just don't. I see a policeman, I'm thrilled to see a policeman because I'm going to be protected. The only time I don't want to see a police officer is when they're tailing me. When I'm driving, they're tailing me, and it's like, oh man, all I think about is I hope they don't pull me over for speeding. I hope they don't pull me over for my tag light because I don't want to get a ticket. I don't think, oh, I could die here. Oh, I could get attacked here. Oh, I could get abused here. Am I going to be a statistic? Am I going to be a number? Am I going to be a cell phone video? Am I going to be, on a t-shirt? Like, is this what's going to happen to me? I don't think that. And black people do. African Americans do. That's a problem. That's an issue. And it's real. It's obviously real. It's really real. This isn't something that I'm making up. And there's so many layers to this. And that's why it's so hard to talk about, is because what is the change? What is going to happen? Can something happen? Can there be true change? Or is there always going to be these pockets of evil cops and evil looters and evil protesters and just bad people? Is all of this going to just always exist? And we're always going to deal with racism. And it's not just America. All around the world, we see this in European soccer leagues where fans throw bananas on the field to taunt black players. This happens all the time. Teams walk off the field in protest. Stadiums have to play with no fans because the fans of the teams are so visceral, so toxic towards the African American players, they can't even be allowed into the stadium. So this just isn't America. This just isn't the Deep South. This just isn't the streets of Minnesota. This is all over the world. And it's 2020. It's obviously a problem that is just as bad right now as it was during the LA riots. It's just as bad right now as during Ferguson. And which kind of brings me to the looters and the protests, is that on one hand, I understand the need for a violent protest or just a protest or a riot in general. I understand the idea that, hey, look, if we sit in our houses and we just write a letter, nothing's going to change. This happens every couple of years. Nothing's going to happen. We have to do this. We have to walk the streets. We have to be loud and scream. I understand that. I understand that 100%. I do not understand where looting these stores and burning down these local businesses. And I saw a video on Twitter of a group that took a homeless man's clothes and like buggy and lit it on fire. People who are just grabbing clothes and money, and they aren't protesters. They're thieves. They're looters. They are the evil. They are part of the problem. Even within the looting, even within the protesting, there are people who just want to do violence. There are people who are just getting their rocks off by breaking a window. There are people who are taking Instagrams and Twitters and TikToks at the scene of the protest. The protests are being used by some people as a backdrop, as if it was Coachella. That's how bad it is when you look at this kind of stuff. And you see Jake Paul in a mask walking through a looted mall in Arizona in the middle of this riot and protest. And you wonder, what the hell is he doing there? What are these people doing there? What are half of these looters doing there? We see this everywhere. There are good cops. There are bad cops. There are good protesters. There are bad protesters. 100%. 100% true. And I think a lot of people are struggling with what to do right now. And for me, I believe, it's like I said at the beginning of the show, I believe George Floyd was murdered. I believe the cops should have been arrested. I believe he should be tried at the highest extent of the law. All of them. And they've been charged. They've been arrested. They will be tried. I believe that. I also believe what I should do right now is take a step backwards. And I should listen. This is not my struggle. This is not my fight. My heart is broken for George Floyd, his family, and anyone who's dealing with racial abuse and racial issues like this. My heart is broken for the people whose businesses, whose lives, decades of work, decades of passion are destroyed with a Molotov cocktail or a brick through the window.
I can't hear you. If you didn't think it's too damn bad, but don't destroy my stuff. Don't burn down my soul.
Come on, Uncle.
I worked too hard for
People
this.
don't even understand nothing. Come on.
It's not right. It's not right. It's not right what y'all doing. I came from the ghetto too. Same as all of you did.
Y'all need to listen.
But you know, y'all mess up my business. And you call it black power. You mad at the white man. Why destroy my business? Why destroy my truck? Why steal my computer? I'm trying to make it. Could you understand that? Can't y'all see it? I'm trying to make it. Just start listening.
I gotta do my job. I gotta do my job. Hey, man. Hey, why you doing this in your community, man? These clothes belong to some of your neighbors. No. You don't care?
I don't care.
Why? I mean, but what? How can you explain this, man? Is this gonna solve anything?
You says Black Lives Matter. I've worked here part-time. Plus, I'm a part owner of this store. You said Black Lives Matter. Why don't you choke me? I'm black.
Tell him, sister.
Look what you did to my store.
Tell him, sister.
Look what you did to my store.
Tell him, sister. That's like I got they back. These are my
Look.
dudes right here. Good
Look at the
men.
things you've done.
Good men.
Look.
The Black Lives Matter.
We've been here all night cleaning up. All night cleaning.
And you got black people
Now.
standing right here with them. Black
Tell
people.
me
That's right.
Black Lives Matter.
Exactly.
You lied. You wanted to loot the store. You needed money. Get a job. like I do. Stop stealing. This is the neighborhood. We're trying to build it up, and you tearing it down.
My heart is broken for the good police officers who are lumped in with these evil men and women. My heart is broken for them. And my heart is broken for the people who the past generations who have dealt with these racial issues, who couldn't drink the same water fountains, who couldn't go into the same restaurants, who couldn't vote, who couldn't buy land, whatever. But it's not my struggle. I cannot relate to that. I can sympathize. I can hurt. I can, want the best. But it's not my place to say, I know how we can fix this. I will check my privilege. I will be guilty of, I will have white guilt, and that will solve this. In my opinion, that is the most selfish way you can go about this, is to look at George Floyd and to watch the video of him being, the life sucked out of him, stolen from him, his soul stolen from him by a police officer. And you can look at that video and watch him being killed in the street as the police officer has his hand in his pocket. And you can say, if I just check my privilege a little bit, maybe we can make this better. I think we should take a step back and take this time to listen, to feel, to understand what they're actually protesting, what they're actually fighting against, and really trying to understand it from the minority point of view, from the African American point of view, from George Floyd's point of view, not from this weird buzzword, privilege, white guilt thing. I don't think that does anything. Blackout Tuesday is a big reason why I even decided to do this podcast. Because Blackout Tuesday, to me, is so backwards of what should be happening that is really a reason why I wanted to say anything. Is because it's just such a good example of how this whole thing, this whole protest, this whole march has been sabotaged by this swirling wind of look at me and this appropriation of what's going on and this kind of like forcing yourself into this issue. I don't understand how right now, in the middle of this protest, in the middle of the time where we have to be glued in, we have to be seeing what's happening. The only reason we know the abuse of George Floyd is because of a cell phone video on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. How can you now go from right now at the fever pitch of this, when you have the whole world watching, you have the whole world gripped, and they're listening? Who decided that is the right time to go radio silent and to put up photos of just a black square? This seems like the worst idea. And I understand the idea behind it. Hey, we're in solidarity. We're all together. But this ain't it. This ain't it. So when I saw all of this, and where do I see it? Where do I see it? There's white people just posting all these black squares on Instagram, black squares on Twitter. We're not doing anything over here. We're not posting anything over here. We're just shutting down. No news, no communication. And what's it doing to the feeds? It's clogging up all the feeds. So where you used to see abuse, and you used to see what's actually happening, you used to see the protests, and you used to hear from these community leaders, instead of that, now you just see nothing. And who do you think, out of everyone, who do you think wants you to see nothing? Probably the cop who did what he did to George Floyd. Who in this situation wins the most from you seeing nothing? The people who are abusing, the people who are causing this situation. They want you to see nothing. That's what they want you to see. Now ask yourself this. If you knew that posting that black square could be destroying everything that the protesters are working for, would you still post it? And if you would, who are you posting it for? If you would do that, who are you posting it for? And what is the reason that you're posting that? That's my question to you. So the next question should probably be, well, what do you do? What do we do? I don't know. I don't have the answers at all. I don't have the answers for this. And it's something that I don't know if anyone will ever have the answers to. Racism is something that just seems to be a part of evil, just something that's always there. You know, evil's always around. This is something that's always around. I don't have an answer. Part of this podcast is usually me coming out here and saying, this is what I would do. This is what I think. I believe in this. But I don't know. I don't know how to solve it. I urge you, you being white or non-minority, I urge you to take this time to listen, to understand, to reach out, to talk to ask questions, to watch. Do that and do less of walking these streets to get an Instagram or taking a picture of the looting or doing a TikTok in front of the police or posting a black square to do the same things that you're seeing John Mayer do or whatever. That's what I'm saying. And if you're protesting, or if anyone's protesting, I urge you to figure out why you're protesting. I urge you to figure out why you're throwing a brick through a window. What you're actually doing. Destroying our neighborhoods, destroying communities, destroying businesses isn't going to help build up those communities, isn't going to help build up those businesses. If anything, we should be hands in hands building up the communities, not hating the police so you go and destroy a mom and pop pizza restaurant. It doesn't add up. That doesn't add up either. Not all cops are created equal. Not all protesters are created equal. Not all looters are created equal. Now again, this topic is brutal. I hate to see it. I think racism, homophobia, things like that, where you just hate a human for nothing more than the tint on their skin or how they feel or how they believe, whether it's a religion or a gender or a sex or a race or whatever. To me, that is pure evil. And I hate to see it. And the fact that it exists, and it exists so much in 2020, makes everything else look just hopeless. And that is depressing. You know, it is depressing to see that kind of stuff. And hopefully someday there can be a change and we can move past that. But, you know, I honestly don't know. I really don't know. We're going to go ahead, and like I said, we're going to go ahead and end the podcast. These are just some of my thoughts on this. And, you know, I thought I owed it to y'all to at least hear something. And I'm going to sit back now and listen. I'm going to sit back now and understand what really we're fighting here and what the protests are for. I'm going to sit back and listen to the struggle and what minorities go through. And so we're going to hear from a few of those right now. Some of these are, I'm going to link, you know, a lot of this stuff in the bio or whatever. And so give them the due process and really listen to these words and listen to how they say and listen to what they feel. And this is what this is all about. So thank you for listening. I pray that America heals and the world heals.
I didn't want to come, and I don't want to be here. I'm the son of an Atlanta City police officer. My cousin is an Atlanta City police officer, and my other cousin, East Point police officer. And I got a lot of love and respect for police officers, down to the original 8 police officers in Atlanta that even after becoming police had to dress in a YMCA because white officers didn't want to get dressed with niggers. And here we are 80 years later. I watched a white officer assassinate a black man. And I know that tore your heart out. And I know it's crippling. And I have nothing positive to say in this moment. because I don't want to be here. But I'm responsible to be here because it wasn't just Dr. King and people dressed nicely who marched and protested to progress this city and so many other cities. It was people like my grandmother, people like my aunts and uncles who were members of SCLC and NAACP, and in particular, Reverend James Orange, Mrs. Alice Johnson, and Reverend Love, who we just lost last year. So I'm duty-bound to be here to simply say that it is your duty not to burn your own house down for anger with an enemy. It is your duty to fortify your own house so that you may be a house of refuge in times of organization. And now is the time to plot, plan, strategize, organize, and mobilize. It is time to beat up prosecutors you don't like at the voting booth. It is time to hold mayoral offices accountable, chiefs and deputy chiefs. Atlanta is not perfect, but we're a lot better than we ever were, and we're a lot better than cities are. I'm mad as hell. I woke up wanting to see the world burn down yesterday because I'm tired of seeing black men die. He casually put his knee on a human being's neck for 9 minutes as he died like a zebra in the clutch of a lion's jaw. And we watch it like murder porn over and over again. So that's why children are burning to the ground. They don't know what else to do. And it is the responsibility of us to make this better. Right now, we don't want to see one officer charged. We want to see 4 officers prosecuted and sentenced. We don't want to see targets burning. We want to see the system that sets up for systemic racism burnt to the ground. And as I sit here in Georgia, home of Stevens, Georgia, former vice president of the Confederacy, white man said that law, fundamental law, stated that whites were naturally the superior race, and the Confederacy was built on a cornerstone. It's called a cornerstone speech. Look it up. The cornerstone speech that blacks would always be subordinate. That officer believed that speech because he killed that man like an animal. In this city, officers have done horrendous things and they have been prosecuted. This city's cut different. In this city, you can find over 50 restaurants owned by black women. I didn't say minority, and I didn't say women of color. So after you burn down your own home, what do you have left but char and ash? CNN? Ted did a great thing. I love CNN. I love Cartoon Network. But I'd like to say to CNN right now, karma's a mother. Stop feeding fear and anger every day. Stop making people feel so fearful. Give them hope. I'm glad they only took down a sign and defaced a building and they're not killing human beings like that policeman did. I'm glad that they only destroyed some brick and mortar and they didn't rip a father from a son. They didn't rip a son from a mother like the policeman did. When a man yells for his mother in duress and pain and she's dead, he is essentially yelling, please, God, don't let it happen to me. And we watch that. So my question for us on the other side of this camera is, after it burns, will we be left with charred, or will we rise like a phoenix out of the ashes that Atlanta has always done? Will we use this as a moment to say that we will not do what other cities have done, and in fact, we will get better than we've been? We got good enough to destroy cash bonds. You don't have to worry about going to jail for something petty. We got smart enough to decriminalize marijuana. How smart are we going to be in the next 15 or 20 years to keep us ahead of this curve? So that much like when South Africa suffered apartheid, you had Andy and other politicians that could make sure that Atlanta said, Coca-Cola, we love you, but if you don't pull out of South Africa, we're going to leave. We're not going to drink Coca-Cola anymore. Coca-Cola jumped on their side and apartheid ended. So we have an opportunity now. Because I'm mad, I don't have any good advice. But what I can tell you is that if you sit in your homes tonight, instead of burning your home to the ground, you will have time to properly plot, plan, strategize, and organize and mobilize in an effective way. And two of the most effective ways is first taking your butt to the computer and making sure you fill out your census so that people know who you are and where you are. The next thing is making sure you exercise your political bully power and going to local elections and beating up the politicians that you don't like. You got a prosecutor sent your partner to jail and you know it was bullshit, put a new prosecutor in there. Now's your election to do it. You want a different senator that's more progressive, that promotes marijuana through, now is the time to do that. But it is not time to burn down your own home. I love and I respect you. I hate I don't have more to say. I hate I can't fix it in a snap. I hate Atlanta's not perfect for as good as we are. But we have to be better than this moment. We have to be better than burning down our own homes. Because if we lose Atlanta, what else we got? We lose an ability to plot, to plan, to strategize, to organize, and to properly mobilize. I want you to go home. I want you to talk to 10 of your friends. I want you guys to come up with real solutions. I would like for the Atlanta City Police Department to bring back the Community Review Board, one that Alice Johnson was formerly under Chief Turner. We need a review board here because we need to get ahead of it before an officer does some stupid shit. We need to get ahead of it. That's my recommendation to my mayor and my chief. Let's get a review board. Let's get ahead of it, and let's give them power. We don't need an officer that makes a mistake once, twice, 3 times, and finally he kills a boy on national TV, and the next thing you know, the country is burning down. We don't need a dumbass president repeating what segregationists said. You start looting, we start shooting. But the problem is some officers black and some people going to shoot back, and that's not good for our community either. I love and respect you all. I hope that we find a way out of it because I don't have the answers, but I do know we must plot. We must plan, we must strategize, organize, and mobilize. Thank you for allowing me some time to speak. I'd like to appreciate our chief for what she said on YouTube. I thought it was very bold to do. I'd like to appreciate our mayor for talking to us like a black mama and telling us to take our ass at home. And I'd like to thank my friend for convincing me to come here. And I'll defer to Joe Beasley now because he knows a hell of a lot more than we do. Thank y'all.
I'm here because they're not going to demean the character of George Floyd.
That's right. That's right.
My twin. A lot of times when police do things that they know that's wrong, the first thing they try to do is cover it up and bring up your background to make it seem like the bullshit they did was worthy. When was murder ever worthy? Never. But if it's a black man, it's approved. You can't tell me when that man had his knee on my brother's neck, taking his life away with his hand in his pocket, that smirk on his face didn't say I'm protected.
That's right. That's what it is.
We gonna use our platform. I'm gonna use everything I have to get a conviction, to get all these motherfuckers in jail. Excuse my French, I'm angry.
No excuses.
But I'm a proud black man.
Say that. Say that.
I mean that. From the bottom of my soul. And I can say that and tell everybody here I still love you. But I'm at a point now, I don't need your love. I honestly don't need it. And want me to tell you why I don't need it? Because the love I need, it's always been here. It's always been here. We just haven't came together yet. But I'm starting to feel it.
Come on.
Amen. I'm starting to feel it.
I'm with you, Jay.
I'm starting to feel it. And I thank God for everybody here. But we came for justice. We came for convictions. I definitely came because this city is definitely going to take care of my brother's kids. He has 2 beautiful daughters that he can't provide for. 2 nights ago, I'm on the phone with Riots. To my white brothers, I love you. Every race here, I love you. But it comes to a point now where if you love me and you not standing on the side of me, then your love don't mean shit.
Say that. Say that. Say that. Yes.
I'm at the point now where I'm tired of being a bigger person.
That's right.
I'm tired of walking around and seeing white kids and feeling like me being having a big heart and just giving love to every race, and we not getting it in return.